Hello and welcome back to I Create For You. We're going to do another story in the spooky Yellowstone book. It's called The Drowned Man and revolves around Stevenson Island. My superior called me just after sunrise on a warm summer morning in 1929 to report another incident aboard the shipwrecked E.C. Waters out on Stevenson Island. A bunch of drunks were boozing and brawling on the boat last night, he said in a grumpy tone that clearly indicated his lack of morning coffee. I sighed. Again, I had no idea why so many summer visitors flocked to the wreck of the old steamboat on Stevenson Island, which lay partially submerged beside a sandy beach. In its heyday, the derelict tour boat stretched 125 feet stem to stern and had room for 500 passengers. Its reported cost was $60,000, a huge sum in 1905. The new steamboat was by far the largest ship ever on the lake and seemed to promise financial success for its owner and namesake, E.C. Waters, who ran the much maligned Yellowstone Lake Boat Company from 1891 to 1907. Waters was an old reprobate with a bad reputation who ran a leaky fleet of rowboats and a steamship that ferried park visitors from West Thumb up to Lake Hotel. He stuffed his boats with more passengers than they could safely hold. He charged folks a fee upon boarding the boat and another upon exiting. He also charged folks to visit the little menagerie he had on Dot Island, which featured elk, bison, and other native animals. Waters severely neglected his creatures, and complaints grew so numerous that he was forced to shut down this side venture. Indeed, E.C. Waters' actions were so unethical that the park threw him out in 1907. In revenge, the thwarted entrepreneur guided his namesake steamship out to Stevenson Island, shut up its hull, and left it moored there to rot. At first, the abandoned steamboat withstood the steady battering of Yellowstone Lake's wind, waves, ice, and snow. But when the ice broke up in 1921, the ship was pushed onto the beach. In 1926, the steam boiler that drove the engine was removed and used to heat the lake hotel. Winter skiers that ventured across the frozen lake started using the derelict ship as a warming hut, and it became a prop for Jack Cooney's fish fry business, as well as a retreat for brawls fueled with moonshine like the one last night. I want you to head out to the island and make sure no one got stranded there when the brawl ended, my supervisor continued. Right, boss, I said. I reckoned it wasn't much fun to wake up after an all-night drinking party and find yourself stranded on an island in the middle of Yellowstone Lake. Such a person would be tempted to swim for shore, which was the last thing the park needed. The water in Yellowstone Lake was pretty frigid at the best of times, averaging 41 degrees Fahrenheit when not completely frozen. It only took 20 minutes for hypothermia to kick in at those low temperatures. Folks that went down in Yellowstone Lake didn't tend to come up. I hurried down to the marina and headed out in the boat we used for official business. It was a short ride out to Stevenson Island. I sighed as I drew closer to the creaky old tub, listing precariously on the shore. There were empty beer bottles strewn on the beach and floating in the water, always a sign of trespassers. I moored my craft and gathered up as much trash as I could. Then I cautiously ventured onto the rickety steamboat. It reeked of rotting wet wood, urine, and stale alcohol. I held my nose as I searched from stem to stern for intruders in the creaking, swaying mess. The floor was so sticky with spilled moonshine that dead leaves and shredded bottle labels adhered to my boots. My feet crunched on splintered glass where several bottles had broken. Yuck! I shouted a couple times, but no one answered, and I found no bodies huddled asleep in the wreck. Time to check the island. Stevenson Island was the second largest island in Yellowstone Lake. It was 1.3 miles long, and I was going to have to check the whole darn thing, just in case some of the drunks had gone exploring last night. With a sigh, I headed out in a basic search pattern, keeping my eyes peeled for any stranded brawlers along the sandy beaches or in the interior where trees and bracken grew. My only company was a light summer breeze that tickled my neck. The sun glittered on still, serene water. At least I had a lovely morning for my search. By mid-morning I was hot, grumpy, tired, and convinced I was on a wild goose chase. There had been no sign of visitors. If any of the brawlers had been stranded on the island, they were long gone by now. I headed back toward the sunlit beach, ready to return to the mainland. As I came over a tiny rise, the sun disappeared suddenly as if a giant hand had clamped over it. A huge gust of wind struck me hard, making me stagger backward a few paces. The wind was strangely cold for a day that had started out warm and sunny. In front of me I saw the lake churning in great waves while a storm cloud massed overhead. My heart pounded with sudden fear. It would not be easy navigating back to land in these conditions. Then I saw something big and bulky floating at the edge of the water, something man-shaped. My heart leapt into my throat, and I rushed forward with a strangled cry. Dear God, someone had tried to swim to shore and drowned. Or maybe the person had fallen from the boat last night and hit his or her head. My hands felt cold and clammy as I fumbled for the kit in my backpack, my mind racing with a list of things I'd been trained to do in an emergency situation. I broke through the last of the break and leapt onto the beach. The storm wind nearly blew me over. I pressed forward, clothes flapping. My hat went flying, and I grabbed it just in time. The temperature on the beach was below freezing. I could see my breath as I ran toward the still figure lying half on and half off the sand. As I dropped to my knees beside the body, I noticed that the sodden clothing was old-fashioned, dating from long before the Great War. The drowned man looked rather like a fur trapper or explorer from the era when Yellowstone was first discovered. Very strange. Green weeds were caught in the sleeve of the man's waterlogged coat and his ragged wet hair. I checked his neck for a pulse. None. I turned the body over. The corpse felt ice cold as I performed other checks to see if life was still present. I stared into a pair of bulging brown eyes on a blue-white face. He'd been awake when he died. Looking at the distended body, I wasn't sure if the death verdict would be hypothermia or drowning, or both. The man looked rather frostbitten. He was fairly young, his dark hair and his bearded face unlined. I swallowed back nausea. No amount of training ever prepares you for your first death. Though my instincts informed me there was no reviving this long-dead corpse. I'd better do this by the book, I decided. Fighting for control of my stomach, I took a deep breath and bent over the body. In between one breath and the next, it vanished. My hand was still outstretched, but suddenly it gripped an empty air instead of an old-fashioned jacket. I reeled backward with a gasp and landed on my rump on the sand. Where had the corpse gone? I glanced frantically over the calm, sparkling waters of the still lake, searching for the body of the drowned man. The warm summer wind caressed my face as my brain registered the change in scenery. What had happened to the approaching storm? Where were the huge, windswept swells that had frightened me so much when I came over the rise? I scrambled to my feet and stood hyperventilating with my head between my legs, arms braced on my knees. This couldn't be happening, but I knew it was. The storm, winter cold, and corpse had vanished in a heartbeat. They had been shades of a former time, a former incident. So that was why the man's clothes had been so old-fashioned. I slowly pushed myself upright, wondering what, if anything, I should report to my supervisor. I couldn't tell him I'd seen a ghost. He'd fire me. To tell the truth, I wasn't sure I had been hallucinating. I was a scientific man, and I didn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but I had no other term for what I had just seen. Spooked by the accident, I felt an urgent need to walk the perimeter of the island one more time, searching the waters intently for any sign of a drowning victim. I found nothing but a flock of white pelicans feeding peacefully near the wreck of the EC Waters. Finally, I unmoored the official park boat and leapt in, glad to get away from Stevenson Island. Folks said that Yellowstone Lake never gave up its dead. Apparently, neither did the island. I turned my craft and expertly navigated through the sparkling waters of Yellowstone Lake as the white pelicans flapped lazily away overhead. That's creepy. He actually got to touch one for a minute. I think that's probably what sparked it all to disappear. Okay, let's try this. So this man is laying on the beach. I don't know what type of clothing I should have him on, wearing, but I'm going to try to. Here, let me get you down to where you can see a little bit better. Okay. That's weird that the whole system of things changed for this guy, where he actually thought that there was a bad storm and everything. So like the scenery and everything, that's just weird. It's like he was transported into somebody's um, ghostly, I don't even know what you would call it, into their apparition, into their scene. That's just weird. I don't know how I would have reacted if that would have happened to me. So his eyes are wide open. So give him his. And he's got a beard, so I'm gonna give him a beard. So they say he had a beard. I don't know how. Let's just give him a little one. And then his ear be about here. Now he looks like a bald Amish man. Give him some hair. So he was a young man at that. I don't know. I probably would have investigated after I got back to shore and looked up to see if anyone went missing with the same type of features and clothes and stuff that this man had. Trying to make him look a little more like he's been there a while. Okay, so I'm gonna try to draw him in his clothing here. Let me see if you guys can see what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm gonna move it up a little bit though. Alright. Now we'll get onto his clothes here. Makes you wonder if the people who actually hang out on the island actually ever get, like they're drunk, but do they actually see anything? And they probably just chalk it up for them being drunk and not in their right mind, so they don't ever say anything. That would make sense. Okay, now he's laying here. Let's see. Midsection. I gotta draw his other arm here. Oh, that looks funky. Here, let me do it this way. I'm not used to drawing hands like this. There's a little bit, that was a little bit fat there. I'm just going to draw it like this. Like it's like half closed. Anyway, we'll do the leg coming up. I'm just going to do a partial of him because I ran out of room again. I should have had the paper the other way, or I should not have drawn him so big. Okay, now his legs. It looked like I broke his legs, for gosh darn sake. He looks scared, but that's probably why he probably was. Knowing that he wasn't going to survive, he probably would have that look on his face that he was scared. Try to draw a foot here. Just checking to see if you can still see him. Yeah, it's just amazing. You know, like all these different stories, how different people are, like different, how do you want to say it, apparitions or ghosts choose to be seen. Or does this guy even realize, you know, what happened to himself? Does he see himself? You know, you wonder all these things. Is it like an out-of-body experience when you're like that, or how is it? All right, let's get this one. Big toe. It's a big toe. Gotta get the big toe. This is like the underside of the foot. It's laying on its side, if you get the drift of that. And then this one's sort of upright. And he's, oh. And then you would think that this would be where the water is. Is if you half on, half off, like the water would be the beach area. And this is the sand. And then this is the water that's coming up at his feet. We'll just put him like that much into the water. But there's my drowning man. Not sure what his... I guess this is not what a trapper would have worn. But he's wearing this. This is his clothes in my eyes. Yep. Alrighty. I think that's good enough. The drowned man. Thanks so much for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the story. Makes you wonder, makes you think. And I wonder if people still see these out there. because this was back in the 1920s. So, wonder if these apparitions still are hanging around. And how long they stay until someone helps them find their way, I guess. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please give me a thumbs up if you like the content, and subscribe if you also do, and help me get to 100. I'm one person away from 100. I know it's not a big milestone to some people, but heck, it'll be a big milestone for me. To actually think 100 people think my content is a little bit interesting. Thank you so much. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye for now.